call the June meeting of the PCAC to order. We do have a quorum. So the first item on our agenda will be the approval of today's agenda, March 6th agenda, December 12th agenda, minutes for March 6th, December 12th, September 12th, and June 6th. Last year.
We don't have to relive those meetings, do we?
No, we do not.
So I'll make the motion.
Second. Got a motion, second, all in favor?
Aye.
Okay, motion carries. Alrighty, I'll turn this over to Lisa. So we have the elections.
Yes. So we are, each of our councils has undertaken their elections for chair and vice chair. But this is the time that we, in some places they say pass the torch, we pass the gavel. For our, the elections are every 2 years, but then it's essentially 4-year term limit for our chairs. So we have asked those of you who were not able to attend in person or with a publicly accessible address to share with us proxies, and we've received those. Thank you. We'll be having an election for first, second, for chair, first vice chair, and second vice chair. And that would be for Randy as chair, Andrew is
First vice chair.
Andrew is first vice chair, and Jerry as no.
Yeah, he's second, it's fine.
Okay, Andrew is first vice chair and Jerry as second vice chair. May I have a motion? Marisol motions. May I have a second?
Second.
For seconds. All in favor?
Aye.
Is there, was there any discussion?
Oh.
Okay. Any opposed? Terrific. Randy is now the chair
You
of
want a picture?
PCAC.
Harry, you want to take a picture? Yes, we have one not.
Question,
Picture.
are they time limited after this? Or are they just? Yes.
And so each council has the opportunity when the elections come up to elect, change your leadership. Or an officer can be replaced by a vote of 2/3 of the we're gonna get into the bylaw changes shortly. By a vote of 2/3 of the council. But there is, the elections are democratic. There's an opportunity for somebody to put their hat in the ring. But that's why we have the council elections first, or the chairs there, and then as you'll see when we get to the bylaw conversation, we wanted to clarify the role of the chairs and the council leadership and the chairs. So no, it is a democracy. Yes, it just has it just has been working this. Okay.
Ready, so guess Randy's first order of business would be.
Yes, thank everybody for your support. It's my second time here. Last time was 2013. So,
Trudy wants to sit next to Chris, so.
all right, so all right, so according to 12:05, we already had our elections, so I guess we can go to the presenters. Is that what you have to do?
Yeah, we'll go right to the
We can
presentation.
go to.
Yes, give them
Yep.
everybody likes an early start and early quit.
We're waiting for Gabby to leave.
Okay.
All right.
Okay, so do we want to do a quick bylaw?
Yes, go ahead.
All right, so we've sent you all the changes. The staff recommendations to revisions to the PCAC bylaws. The reason that we have undertaken this exercise is, as you know, and we'll get into this a little bit later, Jack has been spending his more time than he wishes in Albany, looking at some language in our internal authorizing language that would for consistency. So looking at our bylaws would just make that language more consistent with the language that is proposed and is in place there. So the bylaw revisions for PCAC, and we'll work with each council separately as well. And just sent this separately as pullout, so you didn't have to read in the squiggly document, that's the technical term. Was to add the bike head members and adjust the number of total members. Which, as you will recall, was a revision to our authorizing legislation 2 years ago, 3 years ago, 4 years ago.
The end of 2021.
But 4 years, yes, and has brought other Andrew to us. We in Article 3, Sections 1 and 2, just split an old section into two to clarify who the PCAC officers are, as I said, and makes the officers the primary officers, so the chairs of each council are the chairs of PCAC. So there's that consistency. And the composition of the PCAC Executive Committee, which this is the way it's been going, but it sort of codifies it, is the 3 PCAC chairs plus an additional representative from each council of their choosing in consultation of the councils. So for instance, on MNRCC, the vice chair of MNRCC is Walter Zulli. But on the executive committee, Francina has been serving. So that there is some opportunity for other people to participate in those. We removed some unnecessary language that is archaic regarding a long string of who does what and says what, cleaned up some typos and some overly gender specific language. So hopefully you've all had an opportunity to look at these. We're not going to vote on them now because we need to read them, discuss them, and move them for a vote at our next meeting under our bylaws. So I'm happy to answer any questions, if anyone has any, as we wait for our other guest.
So yeah, that means I'm a chairperson now instead of a chairman.
Yeah. If you were a chair, I'd be sitting next to 2 chairs. All right, so then we would move this then to our September meeting or vote, and it would go into effect then. And we'll bring these up in each of the individual councils so that in September, everything will into effect. Yes, yeah.
What about the agendas? So I know our agendas are usually really packed and we have a lot of presentations. You generally decide like what either projects or topics of interest each year or each quarter, like how do we plan the agenda? Like who makes that determination? And I also feel sometimes like we have so many presentations that we don't always get enough time to really talk about things. And so I was wondering if there could be that consideration into future agendas.
Sure. So in December, sometimes November, we've sat down as staff and developed some we look at as priorities for the year, and that's based on a number of different things. What has occurred over the year, including the budget and and the new laws and changes. What we see as trends, the things that we've all discussed around the table and that we hear, because we do listen, as items of interest to all of you. Projects that we've been working on over the years, you'll hear some updates on some of that as we go into the staff reports. As well as things that happen at the board table. And we present, and also at the council's end at the PCAC table, here are what we believe should be some thoughts and priorities for the coming year. And we absolutely want input because we are staff to the councils. We are not the councils.
Karen, are you referring to the PCAC meetings or the transit council meetings? Which one are you saying that we have lots of speakers about?
I'm saying,
And how do we set the agendas?
right,
I set the TRC agendas when I hear from all of you, for instance,
Okay.
we have Stuart has been talking about station cleaning. That's why that's our next one. You have referred to the issue of AI. That's coming.
sure, yeah. So
It was two things to talk about.
I'm just curious.
Now, the PCAC agendas, 3 chairs, get together with Lisa,
Oh,
and we, what do you think would be a good speaker for our next PCAC meeting?
But if it's a hot topic, then one
Yeah,
of the
there's a-
councils, then we're definitely gonna have to say that.
Yeah.
We've got hot topic.
hot topic.
Yeah, we have a hot topic, so that'd be a great segue right in.
Everyone, I didn't realize in the presentation, you could start whenever you want.
Okay.
All righty.
Wait, so are there any other questions on that? Because we're also happy to talk if there's something that you want to talk about outside of a giant room full. As said, we're the staff to the councils.
And you could always send us, you could always send us an email saying, I think this might be a good topic to discuss the next, and then we could talk about it and see if we can get that.
Sign-in sheet.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah, I truly need to find it.
Yeah.
All right. Super. So now you've heard about how the sausage gets made in this room. And it's your meeting.
Okay, so it's my pleasure to introduce our 2 guests for today. One is a fairly new, how long have you been working with the MTA?
About 9 months.
Okay, 9 months, right? Got a long time ago and, yeah,
Right here.
she's-
See my fingers back.
just, why don't you just say a little brief thing about you? You can do a better job than I can. Thank you.
All right, first off, good afternoon, everyone. And thank you for having me here again. I've been here a few times. This is a good crowd, important crowd. And it's important that we hear. I'm Michael Kemper. I'm the Chief Security Officer for the MTA. I've been in this role for just about 8 months from now. For those of you that don't know, prior to coming to the MTA, I was 33.5-year veteran of the NYPD, and I retired as their Chief of Transit. I'm going to pass it all to Katie Falaska. She'll introduce herself. She's got a presentation. As she's doing her presentation, Gabby Saliba, who she's Vice President of Security for New York City Transit. He should make his way here, and then we'll do some Q&A. So
He was here with you when we had our,
a month or so ago.
so we know Gabby, yeah.
So without any further ado, Katie Falaska.
Thank you so much, Chief Kemper. Good afternoon, everyone, and thank you so much for having me here today and inviting me to speak at your meeting. Oh, this is perfect timing. Perfect timing. It's Gabby right now. Excellent.
Morning, everybody.
Let's just do a little housekeeping before you do that. So the way we've been traditionally doing these lately is that we're gonna let our guests do their presentation. And then members will have an opportunity to ask questions. I only did that because Randy's chewing. Sorry, Gabby.
Sure, no, absolutely. Morning, everyone. Name is Gabby Saliba. I'm actually in New York City Transit. I am the VP of Security, New York City Transit. Started back in last week of December. So been here for a few months now, learning a lot and having a chance to work side by side with wonderful people. And really looking forward. I was at the last meeting here, and it was a great experience. So I'm here again, and anything that I could do, answer, I'm here. Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Kate on Zoom is controlling the presentation. So if you just say next slide.
Great. Thank you so much. Kate, could we have the next slide? Thank you so much. So thank you so much for inviting me here today. It's a real honor, and I thought I would start by talking just a little bit about the background of the position and my background in general. This position was first announced in March of 2024 by Governor Hochul as part of her 5-point plan to protect New Yorkers on the subways. The position had two main directives. The first directive was to help improve coordination between law enforcement and district attorneys. And the second was to assist in the support of and advocate for victims of crimes in the transit systems. The MTA really wanted to ensure that they had a voice, that they had someone to advocate for the interests of its riders and its employees in the justice system, which can be enormous and daunting. I had the privilege of joining the MTA approximately 9 months ago. And since then, my office has really focused on increasing victim safety and offender accountability by working with law enforcement, with transit personnel, with prosecutorial offices to promote a multidisciplinary, multi-agency collaboration to support crime victims and prevent future recidivism. And we've worked to formalize our position in the criminal justice world. Safety doesn't exist in silos and crime victims' lives don't exist in silos. So it's important for us all to work together and to be involved in that world. We want our message to be clear that criminals who target the transit system threaten the safety of all New Yorkers. If you commit a crime in the transit system, it's serious, you'll be held accountable. It's not a revolving door. It's going to be taken seriously and you'll be held to the fullest extent of the law. My two professional roles prepared me for this very unique position. I was a prosecutor in the Bronx for 10 years, and I spent 4 years with the New York City Police Department as an attorney there. Unknowingly, I have said this before, I was personally preparing for this role my entire life. I've never owned a car. My entire family, like millions of others, has relied on public transit. And I start my day the same way my grandmother did 75 years ago, by leaving her apartment in Brooklyn, getting on the subway and commuting to Manhattan for her work. The transit system meant safety and meant freedom and opportunity to her, just like it did to millions of others and just like it does to me. The MTA, the chairman says all the time, is the lifeblood of New York City, and millions of people rely on it and depend on it. And it's a luxury that not everyone has. And it's really, I consider it a privilege to be the first to hold this important and unique role. Could I have the next slide, please? Thank you. Historically, the MTA has looked at arrest numbers, but not what has happened to those cases. So my office wanted to do a deep dive into transit crime prosecutions to really garner a deeper understanding of how we could help and where the MTA could intervene and where the MTA could offer our support. So we met with operating agents, presidents, we met with respective safety and security departments. Gabby and Chief Kemper came after I started, and whether they like it or not, we're all tied at the hip now. I met with general counsels, we met with labor relations, union representatives, crime victims, different police departments, prosecutors' offices throughout New York State and throughout Connecticut. We reached out to everyone and we said, we are here to help you. What can we do? Where are there problems? What do you need from us? How can we help improve things? We really wanted to focus on collaborative efforts, not just to combat crime, but to see that those cases, when an arrest is made, are meaningfully resolved and to make sure that the survivors feel supported throughout the process. We gathered a lot of information. We looked at a lot of different types of cases, not just those coming from NYPD Transit Bureau, but there are many layers of governance to reach out to and to speak with. And we looked at crimes on buses. We looked at crimes on the Long Island Railroad, crimes at the Metro North. We spoke to, crimes occurring on bridges and tunnels. We spoke to representatives from the 5 district attorneys' offices here in Manhattan, but also in Connecticut as you go upstate. Or, there are lots of different levels of municipalities, village courts, local district attorney's office. We thought it was important to speak to anyone that was involved, anyone that could touch even tangentially crime in transit. And it was important for us to get a holistic view of what was occurring and then sort of work internally to help identify where there were weaknesses. Everyone has been extremely gracious, and there's really it's never been about finger pointing. If a deficiency was found, it was something that was celebrated because it meant that we could start to implement solutions. Could I have the next slide, please? Thank you. So the overarching issue identified was simple, and as is the problem in many worlds in many, situations. It was a lack of communication between the MTA, law enforcement, prosecutorial agencies. To address this, I like to think of my office as the translator. I speak prosecutor, I speak a little bit of law enforcement, and thanks to the many patient people here at the MTA who shared their roles and their responsibility and given me small glimpses into the work that they do, I'm starting to learn the lingo of the MTA. We wanted to make sure that my office was a point of contact for anyone. The first communication issue that really stood out early on was there was a lot of confusion from prosecutorial agencies and others in terms of who to contact when they needed specific information. The MTA is massive and holds a lot of information, and it was clear that there was not, a clear process in place for everyone. Some people were sending FOIL requests, some were reaching out to NYPD when it should have been MTA PD and vice versa. Some were reaching out to the MTA Inspector General. And there ended up being a lot of duplicative efforts because of this lack of clarity. So my office wanted to make sure that we were the window to the MTA. If law enforcement or prosecutors needed anything, if they needed a witness, if they needed video, they can call us and we can help, direct them to the right point of contact. Even identifying a lack of communication on a more granular level was very important to us. For example, New York City Transit and NYPD Transit Bureau work hand in hand every single day, wonderful relationship. So if there was something needed from the MTA, like a video, there were never any issues. From day one, everyone knows the process, everyone knows who to call, everyone knows the procedure. It works perfectly. However, crimes that occur on MTA buses aren't handled by NYPD Transit Bureau. They are handled by the respective precinct of where the bus is traveling when the crime occurs. So we saw that those officers weren't necessarily familiar with the process like Transit Bureau was because they may not have dealt with it previously. So one example, December of last year, there was a bus operator assault that happened on Fordham Road up in the Bronx. The case didn't originally start as a felony, but the individual was arrested on a Friday. The Bronx District Attorney's Office was successful in having bail set. And they called us and they said, we don't have the video. We have to present the case to the grand jury on Tuesday, and we don't know who to call. So we were able to make sure that within 24 hours, the Bronx District Attorney's Office and NYPD had that video. They were able to get it before the grand jury, and that defendant was indicted for assaulting an MTA employee. My office really wants to see seamless communication among stakeholders to the greatest extent possible. So one solution we came up with was we created a working document that we entitled Guide to MTA Evidentiary Requests. And we worked with an internal team here from MTA Legal, MTA PD. We worked with each operating agency's safety and security teams, as well as NYPD, to create a document simply laying out the types of information and evidence that is commonly requested, who to call, how to request it, whether that's the name of someone who might have witnessed a crime, whether that's a document, whether that's video surveillance. And as I said, what's needed? Is a subpoena needed? Can you email someone? Here's who to follow up with. And we've distributed that to all of the prosecutors that we work with, as well as to the law department for juvenile cases. And that document is being constantly updated and reworked as we look for opportunities to better streamline information sharing. The second issue that we identified in terms of a communication issue was that we weren't talking to each other early enough. By we, I mean the MTA, law enforcement, district attorney's offices. Prior to my office, there wasn't always regular interagency communication at the onset of a crime. And we wanted to make sure that all partners had the most accurate, timely, and holistic information on the offender as well as the offense at all stages of decision-making. So from the initial investigation through decisions for what to charge, all the way through sentencing recommendations. We wanted to make sure that everyone, early input and information sharing really ensures better collaboration and more successful investigations and prosecutions. So two examples that are more recent, in October of last year, there was an MTA conductor who was stabbed at Utica Avenue Station in Brooklyn, and NYPD, the MTA, the Kings County District Attorney's Office We had all talked and were communicating even before the arrest was processed and brought to the district attorney's office for drafting. Another example, in January of this year, there was a customer who was stabbed in Grand Central Terminal. Normally, there's an arrest, whether it's for assault in the second degree or whatever it is. And then there'll be discussions with the DA the following morning. But in this case, there was early communication and coordination between MTA PD and the Manhattan District Attorney's Office in real time, which resulted in an enhanced investigation and prosecution. Both of those cases have since gone before the grand jury, and both the defendants have been indicted with attempted murder, respectively. The third issue in terms of communication that we saw was that we weren't speaking to as many people as we could. We could make new partners. We could reach out and see who we could collaborate with. And a good example of this is the Office of Special Narcotics. They never really worked with MTA PD before. So in September, there was a, sort of like a pilot program. And since September of 2024, there have been, I think, approximately 25 MTA PD cases that have been collaborated and accepted by the Office of Special Narcotics. And the relationship continues to grow. And I think the beginnings of new partnerships are never easy, and they can always be daunting. And that's why sometimes people are hesitant. But I think successes like this evince the importance of talking early, and you could talk about anticipated challenges and have an open dialogue and sort of identify any key concerns before they escalate. So that's one example of a good shift that you've made. Okay, could I have the next slide, please? Okay, could I have the next slide when you get a chance?
Can't hear you.
Yes. Oh, there we go. Thank you. Thank you. So supporting employee survivors is obviously a top priority for our office, as well as supporting customer survivors. Crimes that occur, particularly against MTA employees, they don't occur at random. They don't occur by accident. They are crimes that intentionally target people because of the uniform they wear, because of the work that they do. And we have to remain steadfast in our commitment to employee safety and seeing that these cases are swiftly responded to and aggressively responded to, because as I've said, an attack on our systems is an attack against all of New York. And, speaking with police officers and speaking with DAs and testifying in court isn't like it appears on Law and Order. It can be really nerve-wracking, and there can be a lot of reasons why a survivor is hesitant to do it. So the more supported a survivor feels, the more likely they are to cooperate with the police, the more likely they are to cooperate with the prosecution, and the more likely we are to have a better result. Which is why, in addition to working with law enforcement and DA's offices on just strengthening cases, we have worked on some crime prevention strategies and some survivor support strategies. While the MTA has a lot of programs in place to support its employees, we've tried to expand on those resources. Since I began, I've attended over 100 court appearances for both employee and customer survivors. I find it a very personal thing to attend, particularly for an MTA employee survivor, and offer that boots on the ground support from the authority. And it's also very powerful to show the MTA's support in court for cases where customers were, injured or were a victim. It often can be very difficult for a survivor to attend every single court appearance. Criminal cases can last years, and it can be hard emotionally. It can be traumatic for the survivor. It can also be hard logistically. People have jobs, they have childcare issues. They can't always attend to watch a 5-minute, case called before the calendar. So I consider it really a privilege to be able to show up in even a small way and sit in court and have the MTA seal on their behalf. We have also changed in terms of making it easier for, if a report is made to MTAPD, making it easier for a survivor to obtain their own police report. A survivor may need their own police report for any number of reasons. And, just making things as trauma-informed as possible. We wanted to make it very easy for them to get their own documentation. They might need it for, applications for the New York State Office of Crime Victims Assistance, for reimbursement for their employer, things like that. So we're looking at little things we can do that hopefully will make the difference in terms of supporting employees and customer survivors. Okay, could I have the next slide, please? Thank you. So looking forward, it is our priority to continue to build on the ongoing communication and collaboration between the MTA, law enforcement, and prosecutorial agencies. And I know we're having success in this venture already because I think when there's trust, people ask questions and they talk. And as you know, as Gabby and Chief Pepper know, we talk every day. We get questions every day, you know, law enforcement, the DAs, every single day we talk all the time. And I think that's a really positive sign. We're going to continue to focus on advocating, of course, for our riders and our transit workers through ongoing projects relating to survivor support, continuing, of course, court appearances. Another priority is really formalizing our place, as said, in the criminal justice system. We want to make sure we always have a seat at the table, and we want to continue to work with all players to ensure that the MTA can be plugged into any criminal justice work, any criminal justice initiative, and have our voice heard. Notably, the NYPD has welcomed MTA PD into their Special Victims Division training program and is continuing to make space available so that they can jointly receive that training. MTA PD has also partnered with NYPD Gun Violence Strategies Partnership, which is a collaborative effort that focuses on strengthening investigations and prosecutions of really severe firearm offenders, along with about 20 other agencies. We've worked with the Office of Court Administration to ensure that the MTA PD is immediately notified if a transit ban is issued by a judge as part of a sentence. And thanks to the joint efforts of the MTA PD and the Manhattan District Attorney's Office, in the last year, we've actually had 2 more of those bans issued, which is, you know, positive as part of a sentence. And we are looking forward to continuing to work with law enforcement and prosecutors to, you know, enhance cases at the earliest stages, to work on crime reduction initiatives, to encourage reporting, to make the necessary resources available to survivors so that they continue to cooperate with, as said, law enforcement and prosecutors. And I want to thank you so much for having me at your meeting and for allowing me to talk about the work I've done so far and, you know, how we're going about this new role, and for bearing with us as we sort of figure out our place and where things are going to go. And thank you so much.
Thank you.
Best thing that you have less work.
Do you want to go to questions now, or do you want to,
We have about 15, 20 minutes for Q&A.
do you have,
Nope.
either of you want to say anything, weigh in?
I think we did a whole presentation and then we're here to answer anything we can answer.
Randy, it's a
Question, my hand
Okay.
raised. Andrew.
Oh, excuse me, I'm in charge here.
Oh, I'm sorry.
There's a new sheriff in town. We're going back to when I was here the last time. See, with all the respect.
PCAC, not TRC.
I'm so used to nudging Andrew that.
No more nudging.
I'm just curious as to how you've been able to handle the jurisdictional issues with the different agencies.
So everyone has been very gracious, you know, whether it's Connecticut, whether it is Poughkeepsie, whether it is Brooklyn, everyone's been very willing to talk with us. And, you know, even if it's a small town court in, you know, up in Rockland County that we only have to deal with once every 2 years, you know, I think it was important to make that connection and make sure they know that our office is here in case they need something. So everyone's been very gracious. And of course, you know, we deal with some partners more than others, but I think it's really important, as I said, even if it's just one case every 2 or 3 years, that they have someone.
I'm sorry. So I'm just to add to that, I know you've mentioned PDs and the training that you're giving to the officers, so they understand some of the transit concerns that you have. So have you been able to resolve where one starts and where one ends?
Oh, I'm sorry. So to be clear, I'm not giving training to the police departments, but in terms of, do you mean like if there's a moving train?
Right, so you mentioned the bus.
Oh,
So,
yeah.
you know, crimes can go from the train onto
Yes.
the street into the bus.
Yes.
I'm just wondering if there's been a process where that gets ironed out.
So I feel like we normally don't have issues on that. You know, it does come up in the transit world a lot. A train could be heading to Connecticut and be crossing over the border, or like you said, a train could start on a street and end in the subway system. And I feel like, I don't want to speak for, the chief, but I find that the police departments normally have that worked out themselves. The DAs work it out themselves. There's never a sort of you take it back and forth fighting. That's always resolved.
So in the NYPD, when I was there was never an issue. It was, there are literally procedures built in place to ensure that there's no issue occurring.
Okay,
So
awesome.
there's always communication between transit cops, executive teams, and then what the NYPD will call Patrol Service Bureau.
Appreciate it.
No
Thank you.
issues.
Andrew? Thanks for your report so much, Katie. So I may have brought this up last time you were here, Chief, but I was horrified this morning to hear once again, somebody got control of a subway train near Liberty Avenue on the Sea Line and started moving it several hundred feet, maybe a few stations. And just the other day, a conductor was doing his job and sticking his head out of the window to look up and down the platform and was smashed in the head with a pipe. So we must protect our workers, obviously, and it's too damn easy to get into the train and make it move. Where are they getting these keys from?
Well, let me start with this. So that was an 18-year-old female, which is a little rare. This is part of an issue I've been very vocal on, and we could sit here and if you don't listen to what I'm about to say, if there's no action on what I'm about to say, there'll be people sitting here in 20 years talking about the same exact topic. This person was arrested days before for a felony for assaulting an MTA. When I say, what's up? And when I say days before, I'm literally talking about days.
This is the attack. This is the conductor.
Released, case referred to the abyss. I don't know where it was deferred to, but literally 2 days later, and this is concerning and, makes entry onto a train and successfully was able to move it. We spoke about this a few weeks ago. We described what we were doing behind the scenes, MTA working with law enforcement partners. The silver lining or the good news with that case, a lot of what we developed was instrumental in identifying A, the movement of the train, and B, the images. The onboard video on those trains captured images of the individual that took custody of that train, which led to the identity. Oh, that's so-and-so who was just arrested 2 days before for felony assaulting an MTA employee. This individual was apprehended and arrested. Andrew, here's what's going on, and I'm going to speak very blunt. We spent time talking on this topic. This is a serious discussion, a serious topic, one that the chairman has made it crystal clear, and understandably so. Myself, Gabby, our teams have made it clear to our teams. We need to find ways to prevent this from occurring. There have been processes put in place that can assist. And I'm telling you, as I'm sitting here, there's a lot of discussions with different mechanisms to prevent this from occurring in the future. But this is a serious topic. And why do I say? Because I'm talking about consequences. We're talking about crime. We're talking about arresting people 100 times. And all eyes are always on law enforcement. Like, we need more police. We need more police. You could have 40,000 extra cops, and I'm all for more police. You could have 100,000 extra cops. If there's no consequences when people are arrested, then what are we doing? We're talking nonsense. The question is, what happens to these arrests when someone's arrested repeatedly? What are the prosecutors doing? What are the judges doing? And what do the laws allow everyone to do? Nobody, or I shouldn't say nobody, but this conversation that I'm having right now is very limited out there. You don't hear people talking about this. I've been talking about this for years. Why? Because I know the business. I believe in what we do. And I'm telling you, recidivism is a major problem. And it's always, we need more police, the police to do more work. The police got to step in. Arrests are up hundreds of %. How is someone arrested 50 times? How is that advancing public safety? And when are the questions gonna come to the lawmakers, to the judges who are releasing these people, and to the prosecutors that aren't prosecuting these cases? Then we act, wait, and then we act surprised.
Yeah.
It's a serious conversation.
Yeah.
And that's what I said. We're gonna be here 20 years from now if nobody listens. to
God
us.
forbid that train went through a red light, hit another.
And then we're gonna be surprised, and we're always surprised when something horrific happens. Oh my God, hey, at what point, the 60th arrest, the 12th arrest? We've arrested people 100, well over 100 times. At what point are they gonna be put in timeout? How is that advancing public safety? So I apologize for my demeanor or my tone. This is serious business. This is a challenge, and everyone in this room is a change maker in this conversation that I'm talking about.
Thank you.
So,
So I just would like to clarify one thing. The 18-year-old was actually not the one that was punched in the face. That was, she had pepper sprayed a conductor, and Gabby and an arrest was made. NYPD, the district attorney, they charged the felony, a judge, they were allowed to request bail, the DA, and a judge let her go. The very next day, same thing, you know, at New York City Transit, NYPD, myself, the Kings County District Attorney's Office, all worked together, again, was able to charge a felony, several felonies, actually, multiple felonies. And prosecutor asked for bail, and again, she was released. And I think that, you know, like Chief Kemper mentioned, there is a component of the criminal justice system that we often don't talk about. We often talk about law enforcement. We often talk about prosecutors, but you know, there are certain legislative and judicial decisions that we often don't talk about. And I think that's something just to be noted and just to remind people of that, even when everyone in terms of sort of law enforcement and DAs work together and you see the right charge and everyone requests the right thing, there can be issues.
This individual was captured on video. I saw it. Maybe some in this room saw it. It's crystal clear. Make no mistake, this person was moving a train. You talk about a public safety threat. This person was arrested days prior for a felony for assaulting an MTA employee. This person's out. That's not the police department. That's not MTA security. They did their job. The fracture or the breakdown is elsewhere. And everyone's just hyper focused on more cops, more cops,
Are you
more
guys
cops.
not allowed to question why?
So
this, I mean,
Randy, yes.
Yes.
And that's really what she explained her role is and the beauty of Katie and her role. Katie knows both universes. Katie was the prosecutor. She's an attorney. She knows law enforcement. Katie speaks for the MTA. Incredibly powerful to have an MTA. I know you said something before. The MTA carries a lot of weight. When Katie walked into a courtroom, which for years have never happened, make no mistake, the judges take notice that there's an executive rep from the MTA in that courtroom that understands what's going on. Now, I gave you a situation. I spoke about the situation that went sideways. We could sit here and talk about dozens success stories we had because of Katie demanding and knowing the process, getting the police to getting the proper evidence in a quick manner, getting the witnesses to court, helping them and assisting. So it's not all doom and gloom. Don't understand that. I truly believe we could do so much better if we really wanted, if we collectively as a community really wanted to really clamp down on crime, it could be done. But get all the attention in the eyes, keep them on the face. Shift a little to the other people whose decisions have so much impact on cases.
I just want to follow up and say that I appreciate your demeanor today. Because as a transit advocate, one of the most frustrating things we get from Albany every spring, and we got it this spring. Oh, why should we give the MTA more money? Make the subways, make transit safer. These are the lawmakers. These are the people that are tying your hands. Or, you're doing your job, you're getting the arrest done, and then it's going into court. And again, someone who commits a felony on an MTA employee should not be on the street 24 hours later. you know,
Sharon.
And imagine they're arrested 48 hours later for driving a subway. You talk about super dangerous. You could run over track workers. You could collide into another train
Exactly.
and out right now.
yep,
Out right now. What is the message? Without consequences, where is the deterrence? This person, obviously something's going on in their universe,
yeah.
right? What are we doing? The police, the police, the police. Here are factual numbers and God bless, you know, the work ethic of the NYPD. But this is important you hear this. When I say the arrests are up versus 2019, 183%.
Don't exaggerate.
Big numbers.
What about convictions?
Well, the better question is, what are happening to these arrests? And why are they forced to arrest people? And I'm not kidding, and I'm not trying to be a wise guy, over 100 times. And how is that advancing what we're trying to accomplish here? How expensive is that? Does anyone even talk about the cost behind that? Nobody. Tell you what they talk about. Police, we need more police, we need more police.
Before I give it to, I had to go through a whole training before I got to drive the subway train. Sharon.
This, just a specific question. You referred to fare evasion enablers.
Yes,
Can you tell me,
sure.
is that the people who are opening the door open?
So yes,
Which is often the
that's a-
police who are hired to do.
yes, so that's a phrase we use, you know, for evasion enablers, mass fare evasion, people that either vandalize machines or
What
are.
kind of penalty is there for that?
Well, so it really depends on the type of crime. It could certainly be a felony. It could be, you know, it depends on if someone, you know, we used to call it like selling swipes. That is someone that is, you know, so we're really working with NYPD as well as New York City Transit Department of Stations and Department of Security to identify these people. The NYPD actually has a specific well, they call it the MetroCard task force. Maybe it's going to be changed now that it's Omni, but working together to identify sort of high traffic areas. You know, these people are known to target stations where there's a lot of tourism or there are, you know.
Jamaica, Andrew, we had a discussion a couple of days ago. We're on that. These are people that scare people and really are a lot of what's wrong. Just envision yourself walking to a subway station and someone saying, give me $2.
I'll swipe you in.
And I'll strike you. That's,
Intimidation.
this is what we're talking about. And then here's what's really going on in so many cases. My God, and forgive me, but I'm a little passionate today. But I'm passionate because this is important stuff. They break the machines. So here's what's here's the stereotypical or the routine scenario. These are people that have been arrested for this 70 times, 40 times, 250 times. And they're arrested over 100 times for doing the same fact pattern I'm going to give you because they can't, because there's some consequences or very little. And this is what we're trying to correct. And we're moving, believe it or not. We could talk about the progress that we're seeing. And so we are encouraged. They break the machine so you can't put money on your card. And then what do? Hey, if you want to get in, give me $1.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
Some of these people.
125th and Lex.
Some of these people aren't, some of these people aren't the friendliest. To be nice, I'll call them a cast of characters. And to be quite frank, they scare people. So just imagine how that weighs on people's minds that walk into the subway system at 9 o'clock at night with their children and this is what they have to come across. But yeah, I'm giving maybe a little bit of a colorful example, but that's a true, and I'm sure some in this room know exactly, will probably encounter exactly what I'm explaining. And you talk about victim, that's not victimless. You're breaking property of the MTA. It costs untold dollars to fix these machines.
Causing trauma.
Yeah. You know, we're losing money on that. We're losing money on the fare. And maybe to some people, more importantly, it's definitely a conversation. You're messing with people's psyches and you're creating fear.
So we're going to go around the table.
It was a great presentation and the efforts at collaboration. You know, they may be bearing fruit. And, you know, even though I had raised my hand earlier, but by the time you got to me, you may have touched on this. How are you measuring your success with those efforts at collaboration? And, you know, when the chief was here before in his prior role, and I had asked a question about, do we know who the offenders are? And you were very direct and shared who they were. There were a lot of repeat customers. So, you know, it's a two-part question. So, you know, are those efforts yielding fruit? And then in terms of convictions, you know, are we sharing information about people who are committing these crimes over and over again?
Yeah, so I'll start with your first,
Yeah.
the first part of your question. And, you know, it's a difficult thing to, it's a difficult thing to answer, and it's a very easy thing to answer. This is a new job that's never been done before. So in terms of a KPI of a success rate, I view it as people feeling safer and being safer. You know, justice is served or thwarted by people. And, you know, there's a reason that district attorneys, that process, that we don't talk about conviction rates like we talk about arrests. There are, and why we have to do a deeper dive into prosecutions than just saying someone was arrested. I think that, you know, it's hard to speak about a successful prosecution in terms of a number, because we see cases dismissed by judges. We see cases dismissed by ADAs. We see cases dismissed by grand juries. We see cases dismissed by trial juries. You know, it's something that in terms of a conviction rate, you know, you could have, like we spoke about, you know, Gabby and I, this 18-year-old, you know, NYPD, MTA, TA worked great together. Felonies charged, bail requested, let go. Felonies charged, bail requested, let go. That case, the district attorney's office could bring it to trial. NYPD could testify. The MTA employee could testify. A grand jury could dismiss it. A trial jury could dismiss it. A trial jury could find them guilty, and a judge could sentence her to time served. There are a tremendous amount of variables. An MTA employee or a survivor should say, this is too traumatic, I don't want to testify, and the case has to be dismissed by operation of law. There are a lot of variables, which is why I don't look at conviction numbers, because if we're working together and we're doing the right thing and people see the effort, that's the way I have to view success, not a conviction, because there are just too many variables and you can't always tell what's going to happen before a jury. But I think that, you know, if the CPD and the DAs, as said, charging felonies, asking for bail, putting a case in the grand jury, making a strong offer, that's the view of success that I have. And that's what I look for. And we have had success. You know, we could stay and talk about it, but I want to answer as many questions as possible.
Yes,
We're going around the table.
yes. First of all, I have to say, for the last months, I have to say I like your work very much. And Chiefs, don't get upset, Chief. I still love you too. You're good. But no, what I'm saying is I'm glad to see there is an advocate. One thing I hope you do work on, and I deal with the accessibility with disability. As you know, next month is Disability Pride Month. I just hope we can work together, helping with people with disabilities, because there's mental health issues, and there are people who don't have mental health issues, which they have all different types of disability. So hope we can work together and solve some of those issues. Thank you.
Thank you.
And that was quick.
Two follow questions. My first question is to you. I've been noticing a lot that people are walking around with stacks and stacks of Metro cards, which are about to be obsolete, coming into like hair salons and nail salons and selling them. You know, what are we doing about that? That is like really a problem, you know, and you're scaring people.
Especially if you don't look at the expiration date.
Exactly. I mean, stacks. How are they getting connected to stacks and stacks of Metro cards? That's my question to you. And my question to you, Chief, we've had this conversation the last time. We talk about age, you know, and Katie asked you also the same question. Unfortunately, my son last night was a victim of a crime, of a robbery, my young son. And how much does age play a role in these convictions? And what the judges say, you know, that's just let them go.
So for the sake of time, I'm sorry to hear that. No, you know, I'll be out of respect for you and your son. I'm not gonna get into that situation, but I hope he's all right.
It's okay, yes.
And then people don't say, yeah, he's okay. What about psychologically, right? These people have to live with this. And as a mother, what does it do to your mind? Very quick, short answer. What does age have to do with it? A lot. And, yeah, it's two different courts. It's two different, sets of rules, if you will, two different processes.
The offender, I'm sorry, Chief, not of your, not.
No,
I'm a victim of the.
Yes.
no, you're talking about the person that committed the crime.
Yes,
Yeah.
Yeah, well, the offender, the criminal, yeah, the person that committed the crime. Yeah. And they raised the age, for years. It was 16 years old. Once you hit 16 years old, barring exceptional high crimes, you were treated as a juvenile. And that was raised to 18. Which, we can have the conversation, I get it, but let's have the conversation on recidivism rate with 17-year-olds and 18-year-olds. But it plays a role, a big role, a lot.
Sorry.
Different. Aaron?
So I was curious,
We have a few more minutes.
I'll be quick.
I have a very close.
You have a losing, I don't want to say losing battle, but the tougher battle is that you have changing mores. Like when I was a kid, like people who beat the fair were like high school kids or, now you have a large section of the population that doesn't pay their fare on the bus, on the train, including visitors as well as people who live here. And so how do you deal with that?
So.
Well, it's something that the chairman talks about a lot. You're absolutely right. There's a lack of, I would say, like, it's almost civic responsibility. And, it's something that he absolutely talks about. And we discuss particularly in terms of, juveniles when they, I've heard anecdotally, conversations, getting your sort of Metro card as a kid when you're going to school is the equivalent of like getting your driver's license. And, there, I think, efforts across the board, not only in terms of law enforcement, but instilling that sense of responsibility, similar to when you maybe get a driver's license, and that this is everyone that rides systems together and instilling that sense of community. And it's a really good question. It's a really important conversation. And it's something we talk about as well, the change in, in sort of the sense of community and civic responsibility.
And I have to step out, Gabby, to stay.
So I need you to stay. Can you stay for my?
Yes, I'll take the question quickly and then I'll have
Yeah.
Gabby.
And then I will ask
Gabby's-
to add,
He knows everything.
because I've spoken to you about this also. I am I'm glad that nobody called on me till the end. Because through all of the discussion, all of the questions and everything else, nobody brought up the question of how to deal with the mentally ill. That is not a crime. Chris said that it's a disability, but no, it's not. It is dealing with the mentally ill. I know this because you and I discussed this when you spoke to the TRC, and about my own experience. I have a mentally ill sister. She's now deceased. When Bill Bratton was the chief, and he and I had many conversations about this. I don't know, in all of your presentation and criminal justice, being mentally ill is not a crime, but it has to be dealt with. And there is so much on the subway. I see it more and more and more. And people do treat it, unfortunately, as a crime.
So
Don't.
Let him answer.
I don't treat it as a crime.
No, when you and I had this conversation.
So we didn't get to mentally ill because we didn't get there.
Yeah,
Now we're here.
but is so.
Let him answer. He needs to.
Then maybe we can have another session, or I can meet with you privately. Or I can meet with our criminal.
Just let him answer.
Sir.
Yes. I'm gonna start it. Gabby's gonna take off. I am over.
Yeah, go.
Okay.
The topic of mental illness, SMI, serious mental illness, is homeless, is a topic we take extremely serious. Gabby's going to talk to you about the Scout team expansion. It's probably the perfect time to talk about it because that Scout team expansion was just set in place a week or so ago. Scout team focuses on everything that we're talking about right now. Okay, so I apologize.
No, that's quite all right, quite all right, son.
You have a wonderful.
Appreciate it. Thank you.
Would really like to hear our new criminal justice coordinator.
Yes, gotta go.
Bring her whole presentation.
Let's go.
Yeah.
About the mentally ill.
Thank you very, very much.
I have the same meeting that Chief Kemper has, but what I'll say is this, is that in the just
I can get together then.
the thing is, someone, the people that are mentally ill can be victims of crimes. Being mentally ill is not a criminal.
Tell me.
That's why we didn't discuss it, because to me, it is not a crime. Has nothing to do specifically with the work that we're doing.
It's out of your purview.
Well, we don't treat mental illness as a crime, like you said. So being mentally ill is in no way a criminal matter.
Situation on the subways and it's that one and buses.
Yes.
Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
So much.
Just like one is are you allowed to question, you was like serious person, say, you gotta let this guy go without bail. Are you allowed to question the judge or is not allowed?
No.
Okay.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Take care. What are the judges at a meeting like this?
Don't know, we can invite them, don't know if they'll come, but.
Think about what I'm saying.
Yeah, oh, we are thinking about what you're saying.
Content.
Ask the average New Yorker,
Yeah.
makes the laws. Ask the average New Yorker what an family person does. What percentage have no clue?
Yep.
That's the problem.
Yep.
Names of those judges.
What knows the police though? That's
Well, he stuck with me for,
It's my question.
I am, I know, well,
You're in the hot seat.
he was on the clock for sure. I
Yep.
actually want to get to your question, and I want to get to your question too, ma'am, in terms of what we're doing with fare evasion. But in terms of the mentally ill, I think, the chief and both Katie spoke in regards to that.
Not really.
Let him answer.
Right, well, I mean, they shared their thoughts, so there's programs that the NYPD is doing, and TAPD as well, right, in dealing with the mentally ill. Absolutely, we know, because we take the subway, we see it as being an issue. When the crimes are committed, sometimes we see sometimes the person that are arrested may have some sort of past with mental illness or services for mental illness for sure. The chief talked about the scout team, right, which is basically our officers going out there. They are on the trains, they are on the platform, they are trying to identify individuals with mental illness or showing signs with mental illness. They are going jointly with teams, with mental illness professionals. As we all know, two clinicians, we have to admit, and the chief is so passionate about the police department as I am, because I'm coming over from the police department as well, that police officers are not mental illness clinicians, right? We know that. Yeah, and that's why a program like that is so effective, and you need more of it. You need the expansion of it, because you're right. Someone could be experiencing some type of mental illness. They need to be dealt with in the proper way, so things don't escalate, right?
But it's still not answering if I may.
Yeah, sure. What is specifically?
The team is expanding.
Presentation.
I'm sorry.
I guess it's because
It's not a criminal.
mental illness is not a crime.
Yes.
So is there somebody like I can't put.
Katie, Alaska?
I'll call her Katie. Is there somebody like Katie who is not dealing with criminal justice, but dealing with the mentally ill on the subway? An individual who then is her, online with her, or is it not?
You said the scout team.
No, I know the scout team. I know all of those things. I'm asking, is there an individual?
That's what it is the scout team.
Is there an individual?
So I don't know that there is a title that is called mental illness coordinator, right? Just like you have, let's say, the advocate here, which is the criminal justice coordinator here. I don't know if that title exists. It may exist, it may not exist, so I don't want to speak to that. Right?
Yeah.
So I don't know. That's my answer. My answer is
There isn't one person.
No, yeah, that's the answer. We're gonna move on.
Let him answer
We're running late here. We're gonna move on.
wanted to answer Karen.
Anything?
I'm good.
Okay, Okay, so, all right.
So very important, I did want to touch on the, air compliance, and we know that it's an issue. It's an issue both on subways and issue on buses. On the bus side especially, we have the Eagle team on the bus side.
Good.
Yeah, they are out there, and I don't directly oversee the Eagle team, but they are part of the Department of Security. So the deployment of the Eagle team, there is such a strategic deployment initiative that is going on where we are touching every borough in the city, where we are identifying the hotspots, where you have the highest fare, right? We have data that is able to point us in the exact direction that we need to go in. The exact times when we have the most fare evaders getting on the buses, right? On the subway side, you have the gate guards that are playing such a key role. You have Department of Subways that are implementing such key hardware to try to stop fare evaders that's going on. And we've seen the numbers go down, right? And it is a continuous fight. We are coming out of the COVID period where people are still needs to get in their blood, in their brain that the bus is not free. The subways are not free. You have to pay the fare to be able to kind of keep this operation going. And I want to answer your question directly, so please pose it one more time. Make sure I get the true essence of it.
How are civilians able to get stacks and stacks of these Metro cards, which are going to be outdated and obsolete? I did my little rest in peace Metro card commercial already. And you have these people that are out scamming, selling these have stacks and stacks of Metro cards. How are they getting access, to these Metro cards to sell them to unsuspecting tourists or someone whose car doesn't work? How are they getting access? What are we doing about it? Are you even aware of it?
That is a really, really good question. I'm glad you brought it out, really. That's something that I'm gonna look at. I'm not gonna sit here and say that we've been tackling it, but I know one of the ways that we can tackle it is with education. The fact that obviously the sun is gonna be setting on the Metro cards, we need to be able to get that message out to the folks and to the public saying that these scams exist. It is no different, right? I told you I'm in the police department. No different when tax season is coming around or anything like that. You're getting 1,000 phone calls from these scammers. We have to be able to educate, especially our elderly populations or unsuspecting individuals, to let them know that this is going on. In terms of where they're getting it, very good question. Very good question. And that's a question for us to kind of figure out.
Machines.
How
How many more scout teams have been added?
I don't have an exact number on top of my head for you right now, but it expanded tremendously. It really did.
The best thing about the scout teams is that they do follow up when they take someone in for service to see if they're still there, if they've been treated, whereas the team that does the overnight removal don't follow up.
Yeah, it definitely different. They have more time, absolutely, more specialized in that way. Yes, ma'am. I don't know if we have one more question.
I think Sharon gets a
All
last.
right, one more
Sharon.
question.
I'm not sure who decides where the officers are deployed in the station? Because there are all these officers who loiter where you can't see fare gates. You can barely see the track. And I say,
Can't see the turnstiles.
why are you here? Oh, well, we're assigned to be. Who decides where they are stationed?
Are you talking about police officers?
Yeah, police officers, and it's all of us.
Yeah. So obviously, again, I'm pretty familiar with the structure of the NYPD. You have police officers that are assigned to transit within the NYPD. You have MTA police, obviously, that's with the MTA PD. Each local districts have their own officers. They have stations that they are responsible for. So that comes from the transit commanding officers down, but it's about first line supervision, right? It's about making sure that the officers are doing exactly what we ask them to do, right? So in terms of the deployment, it comes from the transit district, commanding officers downward.
Thank you so much.
It was a pleasure. Thank you. Thank you.
We're just gonna write you into every agenda, son.
So going back to our agenda, the next thing is Jerry's report.
Yes. Just an observation. So again, this is the PCAC, not the Transit Riders Council. So I would have appreciated if Ms. Valeska and her guests spoke more about the other operating authorities. And
We just really mostly about.
Because her focus is the entire system.
Yeah.
And these questions that have raised about the mentally ill, not a crime, but crimes and prosecutions. It would have been nice to hear about the interaction and their perspectives with the other
For the commuter rails,
commuter railroads, right?
it's much worse on the transit system, which is why.
She talked about relationships with them, but not about outcomes, but yeah.
If I might, I actually have some questions for her about that I'm gonna
Right.
follow up with her on.
Okay.
If you have any, please let us know.
Okay.
Or if she could share.
Yep.
That focus, because that's why we're here today.
Because right now,
PRC meeting.
someone just go to each individual jurisdiction on the commuter routes. So I'm curious to see if that's being changed. So I'm interested to see if that has begun to change and how that's, how those interactions are happening. That hadn't yet, but it's just beginning to.
And if it's not measuring convictions as a measure of success, then I'm still interested in hearing how they're gauging their effectiveness of this position.
Jason has a question.
Send your questions. There.
Rosalind,
What's that?
Rosalind's on Zoom, Roz.
Oh, yeah, I'm sorry, go ahead. Roz.
And Jace.
I have two thoughts along the same line. I recognize that there are tremendous variables that go into this. The crime on our mass transit is a major problem that we're pretending like it's being solved, but I don't see it being solved. What I am missing is there was a lot of time spent on the fact that the judiciary is the problem, but I didn't hear any concrete next steps. So what are we doing to try to influence that? What should we be doing or whatever? There was just I'm convinced that you don't need somebody to be released 100 times, but so what are we doing to resolve that? And to piggyback on the comment about assignment of officers, I can guarantee you, I was in Grand Central. There were 3 officers in one of those little cars. All 3 of them had their freaking heads into their phone.
Yeah.
Right? So I feel like rather than having
This up so many times before.
3 officers there and with nothing to do, maybe if you had 1, that might be better, but attention needs to be given to 1, the oversight and the assignment, and making sure that's effective. Thank you.
Points.
Right, Jerry? Oh, what are we gonna do?
Okay, may I?
Yeah. There's not one more. No,
That's public.
All right.
Jason.
Jason, be quick.
Real quick.
Hey everyone, I'm here at work. Pretty quick, regarding NYPD presence. Even though that the mayor said that there was supposed to be quote unquote increased overnight presence, I haven't seen none, at least in Brooklyn. But I got news flash for you guys. I haven't seen increase homeless outreach presence at Whitehall Street South Ferry at approximately 4:30 a.m. these past 2 weeks, but outside the fare control. But also, I haven't seen the Eagle team here in Staten Island at all.
Jason,
But I have no Eagle team, Lisa, here at Staten Island at St. George Terminal.
Jason, I was gonna ask if that was Scout you're seeing or BRC at Whitehall?
At Whitehall, I have seen a combination of NYPD presence and homeless outreach people. And we're talking about approximately 4:30 a.m.
Okay. All right,
Can I just follow?
What's our chance report now?
I do
All right, thank you guys.
Everybody's
Okay.
All righty, Long Island Railroad Chairs Report, June. The rehabilitation work on the East River tunnels has begun, and so far we've been fortunate that there have been no major issues. 2 of the 4 tunnels suffered damage during Superstorm Sandy, and Amtrak, which owns the tunnels, will be taking 1 tunnel out of service, and once that tunnel has been repaired, they will put it back in service and start work on the 2nd tunnel. Total time to complete this project will be approximately 3 years. It is critical that this project be completed on time so as not to hold up the implementation of Penn Station Access Service. We will need to have all 4 tunnels available to accommodate bringing some New Haven line trains from Metro North into Penn. The MTA/Long Island Railroad has some serious concerns about Amtrak's ability to properly staff this project, as well as Amtrak's decision to completely close the tunnel being worked on, feeling it would be less problematic to just do the work on nights and weekends, similar to the MTA's rehabilitation of some subway tunnels. With the help of PCAC staff, I wrote opinion pieces in both Newsday and the New York Daily News to support the nights and weekends plan, but to no avail. Earlier this week, I attended a press conference where the Suffolk County Executive, along with the Citizens Campaign for the Environment, called on the governor to push the New York State DOT to complete an already agreed upon purchase of land in Port Jefferson by the MTA. While the electrification/double tracking of the Port Jefferson branch is not included in the 2025-29 capital program, acquiring this property is a critical first step in getting this project in future capital programs, in that it would provide acreage for a new train storage yard, relocation of the existing Port Jefferson station, and a larger parking lot for commuters. The LIRCC will be echoing the call to have the New York State Department of Transportation complete this transaction by the end of this month. The Long Island Railroad continues to have on-time performances in the mid-90s and is rapidly approaching 90% of pre-COVID ridership during the week. Despite the excellent OTP numbers, the Long Island Railroad Commuter Council continues to be concerned about the lack of timed connection to Jamaica, particularly heading eastbound, which occasionally causes some of our riders to miss their transfer opportunities. The Long Island Railroad recently implemented their summer schedule, which provides better service to and from the Hamptons. The Long Island Railroad is also moving forward on a number of capital projects, including the complete rehabilitation of Babylon Station, which is now approximately 50% complete and includes accessibility upgrades. There is also a major track work being performed just east of Jamaica Station that is progressing quite nicely. And as many of you know, Amtrak is taking the lead on the redevelopment of Penn Station, which is their right as they are the owners of the facility. The MTA still hopes to have input into the decision-making process to protect the interests of the Long Island Railroad riders. On a positive note, about 90% of the work in the Long Island Railroad section of Penn is completed, and Amtrak has brought in Andy Byford, a familiar name to most of us, to oversee the project. And that's it. That's 5 years from now.
Yeah.
Not even one inch. Yeah.
How, do you add in, how much time it takes to include accessibility in your on-time performance? When the operator has to bring in the rail or bring a person has to enter or exit if they're a wheelchair user?
Just eat it.
And, you know, right, is it considered?
No.
Like if it's taking 7 or 8 minutes for conductor to get a rail plate?
Really?
Is that included in the on-time performance?
That's not. Right.
No, it's strictly on-time performance.
All right, so just a quick thing we have for people who have a nice.
Karen?
Oh.
Long Island Railroad and had 2. So I know that they're doing that work east of Jamaica and it's supposed to have improvements. Because of that work, you never know what track your train's gonna come into at Jamaica. And so it's like scramble. And so especially accessibility, depending where you are on the train, trying to get to the escalator, is the escalator working, is the elevator? So that has been very, very, very disruptive and has caused people to miss connections. And additionally, once you get out of about 8, 9 o'clock in the morning, you have these really long waits for trains to Grand Central or depending when you get to Jamaica, you'll see several trains to Penn Station before you see one going to Grand Central. Or you may have this wait to go to Atlantic. And so I think those things need to be recalibrated. because there's a lot of time lost because of those track changes and also just the schedule for those connecting trains.
Okay, well, I guess the track change all depends on what work is taking place east of the station.
Jerry, can I just back up because,
Yeah.
and I heard what you said out there too, and I just finished a voting meeting. There is.
Back up. Wait, I'm waiting to see you back up.
You got it, Joe.
There we go.
You got it.
Okay, the bottom line is, Jerry, just to let you know, we're glad to see there are Long Island cares. But as Karen, I have to agree with her because there's not just one complaint, there are a number of complaints, and I have brought this, because since we're on the Long Island Route 88 Task Force, and I did speak to Anna Garcia, and I told them that the way you guys have to connect the trains, even from, if it doesn't matter what direction they're going, waiting time shouldn't be waiting so long. And if, say, the person cannot stand so long, it's not fair to them. I'm not blaming Long Island Cares, but if a person's waiting for a train, Grand Central, Penn, or whatever direction, the waiting time connection on the app is too long, and we lose time. Because if people want to read the app, it's a 25 to 35-minute wait. That's not good. Lucky
For what?
any train connections at Jamaica.
Not for Brooklyn trains.
Sometimes, yes, sometimes 20 minutes. And there's times, depends if the train is on
The
time.
railroad could do something really great for riders using Jamaica.
Mhm.
They could make track 1 for trains to Grand Central, track 2 for trains to Penn Station, and track 3 for trains to Atlantic Terminal.
Or 4 and 5.
Instead of making you go up and over to track 12.
Yes.
And there's a problem in track 12. If that elevator's out, we can't go to Atlantic.
Yeah.
I know.
And that's for authorities end.
We were opposed, years ago, we were opposed to them doing that.
And there is one thing I think that could really make the trip better for riders, and that is in train time to list what track on train time your trains will be departing from.
Yeah.
So you'll see it in advance. That'd be a simple.
It does, but it takes a
We
while.
announce ahead of
Takes a
coming to
while.
Jamaica, we're coming on such and such a track. They do not.
They don't always know.
Oh, they don't.
All right, I'll do a real quick report here. If you have a.
I just ask a question. So in a prior meeting, I asked you about, are there any updates on equipment deliveries?
None.
Okay, are they?
No,
Yeah,
there is
right. There's
no,
still no update.
still no update.
Because they're running the oldest possible
Correct.
equipment on the Brooklyn.
Oh, yeah.
But they
Still
can't,
running
and
on
it can't
freeze.
and really a hodgepodge of.
To the best of my knowledge, they haven't even released the contract, and it will take a couple of years. Once the contract's released, it'll take a couple of years before you see the first cars in
But the good
renting
news is the
service.
capital plan is fully funded. So we are a step closer
Yeah.
than we were the last time.
We need to move the meeting along here. Anyone who's like to take and has nothing to do on a nice Saturday or Sunday in the summertime, they train right up to Austining and you can ride the ferry across to Haverstraw. There will be very soon a free bus, take you around Haverstraw and then back to the ferry again. And it's a nice thing to do on a weekend. And it was a relaunch of it a couple of weeks ago and Walter Zulik and I were on that. Ferry fees are going up next month. There's transit, so there's information about that in the stuff that was sent out. Budget, of course, has been mentioned, and we're all three waiting to get our reappointments confirmed to the MPA board. Yes, I'll deal for time.
Okay, I'll go quickly because we are late. Congestion pricing preliminary injunction is a wonderful thing. Feds cannot take action, withhold money from New York for transit projects and everything. I'm sure Secretary Duffy didn't see that coming, but he probably did. Rockaway A&S service is back after 17 weeks. The South Channel Bridge and the Hamels Y have been completely rebuilt, a tour of it, and it's amazing. Many people are requesting the resumption of the Far Rockaway to Rockaway Park shuttle, which a lot of people on the peninsula used, but that ain't happening anytime soon, unfortunately. Of the MTA's 224 active substations, 81 are in poor or marginal condition. That is not good, and that's why fully funding the capital program and having the funds continue from congestion pricing is going to go a long way towards repairing this vital infrastructure. You may recall the State Street substation broke down in downtown Brooklyn last month or so, and people had to go walk through the tunnels, removed from the trains. It was a horror show. We don't want to see that repeated. Broadway Junction is on its way to becoming 100% ADA compliant. That's A, C, J, Z, and L service, which is amazing for that complex, and that can't happen soon enough. It's underway right now.
It's being
In
worked
fact, there's a
Completion date, I should say.
I don't have a completion date, but I know that they're working on the AC already because there's GOs reacting to that. So emergency communication upgrades are going to take place with some of this capital money. We need that really badly. The new countdown clocks on the B division, if you've seen them, they are very easy to read and much more accurate than the old kind that are still on the numbered lines. They're going to be on the numbered lines as well. Don't know when. They wouldn't give me a date, but
They are totally inaccurate.
Hugh was very glad I asked the question about that. And he said, I've been working on them for the A division and we want to see them there too. Some of the ones on the A division are the old brittle kind of stuff. It's hard to read. It's ridiculous. So they're coming, but I don't have a
So
time
it's
yet.
Christmas,
Yes.
Hanukkah.
Best subway performance in decades has been taking place largely in response to the service additions that came in this past summer. You really have much less waits on most lines now. It's
And the same with the two railroads.
and they're running really well. As you heard earlier, Andy Byford is going to lead the Penn Station redevelopment. He has some very good ideas. The worst part of the station, needless to say, for anyone that ever has used Penn Station, is the New Jersey Transit part of the station. It's just hideous. So Andy is going to be a great thing. How he will respond, if there's criticism, we'll see. But overnight 3 service has been extended from Times Square to 34th Street Penn Station, thanks to some electrical work between those 2 stops. Whereas the overnight 3s used to end at Times Square, you can now go all the way to Penn Station, which is great. And 3 peregrine falcon chicks were born on the Brooklyn side of the Verrazano Bridge recently, which is very nice. I won't go into all of the items. Yes, I won't go into all of the items from the state budget, but it's going to respond to a lot of the needs that MTA has, and that's great. And the last thing I'll say is many US cities, such as the SEPTA system in Philly, the CTA in Chicago, BART in San Francisco, and many other places are facing their fiscal cliffs.
Yeah.
And their states are not doing what they need to do to recognize that these transit systems are the economic engines of their cities, which is the economic engine of their regions and their states. New York did the right thing, and we're going to have continuing wonderful service. What they're talking about in Philly is chopping off 5 commuter rail lines, several trolley lines, and reducing subway service till 9 p.m. Unbelievable. That will kill Philadelphia, and Pittsburgh is facing the same thing. CTA and Metro in Chicago are facing horrific things. Chicago would be nothing without its transit system. So we are really lucky to be in New York State and realizing that we have a gem here.
Michael.
Two quick thoughts on that point. I mean, I agree with you 100%. We talked about it at the Metro North Council a month or so ago, and I would just reiterate for the whole committee here. You know, now that New York State has done so much and done the right thing for MTA, we need to hold MTA accountable and make sure they continue to do things as efficiently as possible, because there are limits to what the state can do.
Yeah.
And there are tremendous needs, and MTA needs to make sure they're delivering on that. And, you know, somewhat not really a related question, different question. Did we get any data from them on congestion pricing collections? You know, they've made a lot about, well, no, they made a lot about what they've assessed, right? They've made a lot about how many bills are due.
They've told us getting the money in 3 months of it.
Have they?
Oh, yeah, they did. Oh, yeah. It's the millions of dollars. Absolutely.
So what's the collection percentage?
It's just what they expected.
I don't think we're getting the collection percentage.
I will inquire again.
They have, they've indicated that it is right in line of what they anticipated, at 216 million. Today is 5 months.
Yeah, everything I've seen has been tolls owed, not collect. But that they're right on track for what they think is owed.
Versus collected.
I want to know what they're getting.
I think that, so Easy Pass has only a slight lag, but not a big.
That's the question, right? Easy Pass and the bridges and tunnels have an amazing collection rate because so many people use Easy Pass.
Yeah.
Fewer people in congestion pricing are going to use Easy Pass. That's what I'm trying to
You're
figure
talking about toll by plate?
No, the majority of people do use Easy Pass.
Yeah.
It's like 90%.
Get the discount.
Get the discount, because it is substantially high.
So the collection is basically.
Andy, I have a question.
Find that out.
Report,
Yeah,
it is using Easy Pass, so, because I don't know if you heard what Lisa just said, but there is a discount.
I understand.
And so people, if they have to do it, will use their Easy Pass so that they can get it. And so that makes the collection instantaneous, which is one of the good things. May I have another?
Can I
Oh, no?
could I just add something to that? As far as the collections, what have been, if they can find out how many violations have been assessed as well?
For false plates, you mean?
For false plates or non-payment, because if they don't pay the tolls, right?
I caught several people with.
They have violations, so if there's a way of trying to figure that out as well.
Violations would be on the non-Easy Pass.
Right.
Right, the pay by mail. And the majority of those are the fake plates and the ghost plates, which is why they've expanded the Ghost Plate Task Force to even. And I'm gonna say that thanks in large part to Jerry's, let's call it nudging.
But there's
Persistence.
But there's also some on the Easy Pass because people have gone through without putting any money on their Easy Pass. So there are violations assessed to them. And I can tell you because I used to get a lot of those complaints while I was in the office. So if there's a way of just trying to figure out what those violations are on top of that.
I had 2 interactions in the last 2 weeks with the Clarkstown Police Chief at events I attended. And I got him to agree to sign up with the task force. They had a very nice PowerPoint presentation at the last week's board meeting. And I contacted the Bridges and Tunnels President Kathy Sheridan, and she's going to get with Charlie Chavez, who's their police chief, and they're going to contact them and they're going to see if they can get it expanded.
But we'll get the collection versus so the violation information
Larry.
as well.
I was gonna say, maybe, yeah.
There has been a huge crackdown of ghost plates at Throgs Neck and Whitestone Bridge lately that I've come through in the morning and I've seen like 30 police cars with a lineup of people that they've been getting. So they've been collecting ghost plates, towing cars away. So they've been doing good on trying to pick up false plates and things of that nature.
They can arrest people now as well.
They take their vehicle.
Larry, they have to do that on Halloween. That's when you see most of the ghost plates.
It's actually all holler.
I want to get, I want to get back.
Take back my vote.
I want to get back to we were close to being back on schedule, so it's at 1:25 and we're now at 1:33, so we're gonna run out of time. Lisa, you're up.
Okay, well.
Executive Director's report.
Thank you. I was gonna start by saying that we're 5 months into congestion pricing as of today, and $216 million in revenue has been collected. So what a great segue. So it is working as anticipated. We should have brought that times down the brochure, but there's a.
Last year, it was poor.
Right, and a year ago.
Here we are.
Today, it was, a pause was announced. So, we've come a long way, baby, as the old ads would say. Your PCAC staff has been continuing to work on congestion pricing. Brian and I were in the courtroom when Judge Lyman, made his initial ruling was a temporary restraining order. He came back the next day with a preliminary injunction. It was very interesting, to sit there and to again hear, to this time hear US DOT say that they were really wrong all the first times and all of the good things they said. But to make an argument that made no sense, but clearly because the judge said that the MTA had a high probability of coming out victorious, essentially. The initial court dates that were set, we would anticipate some kind of ruling at the end of the summer, but in the fall. Now we think that that's going to be sooner than that, because the judge really wants to just get this done and over with, and we think that he's heard as much as he will hear. That there's no there. There are a lot of other things that we have been working on, and I'm going to let the people who've been working on them talk about them. So Kara, you want to?
Yeah. So we're planning to have a very busy June. We're hoping to have 3 reports come out this month, one very soon, an update to our Fair Fares report from last year because the city did increase the Fair Fares eligibility threshold from 120% to 145% of the federal poverty level. And so we're that small incremental change, we're still pushing for 200% of the federal poverty level and also expansion to the Long Island Railroad and Metro North within New York City. So we're going to release a report this Tuesday, hopefully, with our maps showing where exactly in the city people would benefit from that change. We're going to be rallying as well with,
Excuse me, Chris, can you just hold up on that? It's distracting. Please. Thank you.
We're going to be rallying on Tuesday with our partners in advocacy and city council members to push for that change. We're also hoping to finally release the report that Henry has been working on for quite a while that TRC members have seen a preview of about bus rapid transit and how to better improve our bus system in New York City. That's on the way soon. And then lastly, we're hoping to release a report that our other intern Benji has been working on our recommendations to the Charter Revision Commission, which you may have heard about. The city is looking to put some ballot measures this November that could help change land use and hopefully improve transit ridership as well. So those are 3 big research related things that we're working on this month. And then
And I just want to say that we have a survey online right now about Omni. If you've used Tap to Go, thank you for sharing. If you used a Tap to Go, if you've used an actual Omni card, we'd love to get feedback. If you can share that, please, with your networks. I bought an Omni card from a machine in the station. Kara's been tapping also so that we can, play along at home, as it were. And it's been interesting. And we're getting calls on how many we've gotten hundreds of responses in the last week. And some interest from days, yeah. So the more the better.
Yes.
Any quick snapshots you can share with us?
There are problems. Some of them are not related to things that you've read about, but some are just things that we know. Like I have an unlimited weekly Omni card, but you can't tell how much when it expires or how much time is on an Omni card.
Fair capping is a big
Fair capping.
Just figuring out when you can, when you hit the fair cap, when you're far from that. So we're going to be thinking through some recommendations on how to improve.
I always, if I have time, interact with people trying to buy Metro cards. Back then, the machines are disappearing, but there was a couple told me they were from China, wanted to buy an Omni card. I said, no, you don't need to do that. If you have a credit card, yes. He went, and they could only tap one person.
Yeah, that's what.
Yes, that's correct, because otherwise you're fair capping. You're adding up to the fair cap.
They didn't have 2 credit cards, so they could only tap.
Supposed to be able to do, I think, about 2 on the spot, as long as it's not past the fair cap, you should be able to tap it once or twice.
In other systems, you can't. You can only do it once. In SEPTA, you can only tap once because otherwise it goes to fair cap. So it may be that here as well.
You're supposed to be able to do it multiple times,
Yeah.
but they need to clarify that policy
Yeah,
first.
yeah.
Okay, what's next?
Jack.
I have been continuing to push our identified legislative priorities in Albany, our fair.
Advocate for.
Yes.
Yeah.
Advocate for.
Advocate.
And yes,
Yeah.
educate and advocate. Go to Albany and talk about bills that we have all agreed are a good idea to pass. Like our fair policies, we're also exploring ways, if it's not going to happen this session, how can we make sure it happens with the MTA? The MTA is coming. Fair adjustment, we're starting to think about that. Also working on the Rider Representation Act for voting seats on the board. And as Lisa mentioned at the beginning of the meeting, what we're calling the RIDER Act, which is an acronym for Rider Interests Deserve Empowering Representation. That was pretty clever. That would just basically standardize some of the things between councils in terms of who can recommend different people, who can recommend spots to open seats and some other small technical changes.
And the session ends on the 12th of this month. 12th, yeah. So there's not too much time left.
No, it's definitely crunched.
With that, also the bike reps, because
Yes.
right now, no one knows who can, recommend Metro North's bike rep or who can recommend the Long Island Railroad's bike.
One of the questions that we were asked was, well, what happens if multiple people want to make a recommendation for one vacancy, and I said, well, thank you very much, we'll take that problem. So.
Well, that goes up to the governor's office, and the governor's office makes the decision, the governor's appointments office, so
We would
that's,
be
that's fine,
happy
yeah.
with the embarrassment of riches.
Yeah.
So we'd like that. And we have gotten at least one update to a bio. So if in fact, and Jess is working on that and other website updates. So if you can take a quick look at your bios and your headshots, and if there's anything that you'd like updated that regard to that, please let Jess know. And any other questions related to any of our.
I just happened to see, Britt and Michael have. In the wrong, you can get it.
Yeah, I asked Michael last month if he wanted a badge. He told me no. So for his request, he gets it in the system and he just checks.
They will get you into Gray Bar as well.
Who knows?
Huh?
One less, he said one less thing for him to carry. I already tried,
All
so
right.
I tried.
Oh, don't forget, we're gonna be switching soon to Omni cards.
It's a whole different conversation. Chris, different conversation.
No, we have what I'm saying.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right.
Got it.
I know that you won't take time out of your busy days. It's something I've always talked about, and so if you get it seamless to get it here, I would like to do that. Okay, so we are done with the reports.
Questions on the reports?
Go ahead.
One thing you mentioned, I had to say, the survey, number one.
Yes.
Very good on the survey. But just to give you a heads up, and I think we should all be sharing this idea as well. And Andrew, hold that joke after I finish.
Yes.
A lot of people are complaining about the 30-day.
Yes.
And what I'm hearing is they may bring it back, or they might tell you to combine with do the weeklies combine. And I said to them, well, if you're gonna do that, you might have to explain it more to the community and to the entire PCAC, because if we're gonna all have to tell this to the communities and other advocates, we need to know what are you gonna say, so how we can support them.
That's one of the questions.
One of the features of our survey that we're proud of is that it's not just about the issues that are happening now. We have a whole section about what features people want to see in the future.
Yeah.
And so we have some selectable options, including a 30-day fare cap, some other integrations. And then there's also an open-ended question where you can think of your own thing that maybe we haven't thought of in the past. So that's definitely something that we want to see, is a 30-day fare cap.
Haven't we recommended on free transfers to buses and subways from for if you have a railroad 30-day?
A city, they're not a 30-day, a weekly. City ticket weekly.
Well, I know we've done the 30-day, recommended that, but then if we get on a weekly, that's even better, but
There is no 30-day.
I know there isn't.
Unlimited anymore.
I know, but
So, well, on an Omni.
yeah, I think it's.
Second question I was trying to say, you mentioned about keeping track when you get your weekly.
Yes.
Okay, since I done the testing and tested in the technology, and I can use an example. My Omni card is actually, because I can track it from, if you go to omni.info, and I did.
If you register it.
I was just gonna say that, thank you, Lisa. Thank you, Lisa, back a second that motion with me, thank you. But I did bring that information there. What I'm seeing is it does keep track of the cap, but what I'm also seeing is that the education information that we have now that's here on this table, this information, there are still gonna be problems with the community to know how to do it or understanding. And I said this last week at the TRC, and it's definitely in the minutes and the recording. But the concern is it's a senior issue, and it's very little on the disabled, because they are looking at it, but there is some concern of education parts we still need to work on.
Well, I would like to know why I need to register a card that I bought from a machine and I can't just go up and tap it and see how much time I have left.
Yeah. Some people in the community doesn't want people to see their how much they have, but that's where they're stealing it. This is what I'm hearing from a police point. I'm not.
You can go up to a booth and swipe it and see what you got.
That's where they
should be able to go do that.
Yeah. But there are some people, and Lisa, you're right. I just
There
want.
should be an option for the people who do.
You took the words out of my mouth, 3 for 3. But what I'm saying is an option means people can say, okay, I can look at this. Some people can tap at a machine, but there's got to be more additional options that we need to see, because people should not be so behind me looking at how much this gentleman has.
To put that in the survey.
I did.
Thank you.
Yes, Carol, sir.
With the Omni card, at least it doesn't show how much you have left when you tap on the bus or anything like that. So they're assuming that people are going to automatically refill their card, but a lot of people don't. And so it's a problem for people.
Yeah, why doesn't it?
Also with the discounted ones, like for seniors, there's no picture. And so how do they ensure that it's not stolen, used by someone else? You know, I
Put that in
think with
in
the
the
other
survey,
one.
please. Please put that in our survey.
Yeah, and I just have one, I know it's a dumb complaint, but the Long Island Railroad, they just changed the monthly ticket. And because they're not using the Metro card anymore, and it's this long ticket that no longer fits in like a wallet or something like.
I've heard that.
And it's,
Can we see it?
Yes.
I'm so ashamed.
Yeah, no.
Going back in time.
Yeah.
Someone said that looked like the old.
Heard that, but I haven't seen it.
Focus group on this?
Yeah.
Seriously.
Not what it should.
Wow, that's like a 10 trip size.
Beastly.
So.
While she's looking, while she's looking, I don't know how many meetings I've brought this up at. You know about this. People buying their cards in a retail outlet. I'll use my local CVS.
That's part of the survey as well. Definitely.
Okay, but it's still, nothing has been done about it. I mean, they say his cards delivered. People, only because they call me and they say, I just paid $5 for what? Because they tell me I don't have any money on the card. So let me just bring this up again.
Yes.
That there has to be some indication at the retail outlets. Not on this, not in the subway where you buy it or any place else.
Take the survey results and do some analysis based on however many we get, and we're gonna think through some recommendations.
Well, do you want me to tell you how many people are talking about?
We're going to include that, but tell them to take the survey.
Yes, we recommend sharing the survey with anyone that you know that rides transit and uses Omni or does not use Omni, and they can explain.
But this will be included, this problem.
So we're gonna go now to old business and new business. Is there any?
I have a new business item.
Go ahead.
I would just like to recommend for a project, once you finish the ones you're currently working on, exactly what was discussed earlier today. Something that we can aim at our state legislators. In other words, because they came back this spring. Oh, why should we need the money? We need safer subways. We need, gotta crack down on the fare evasion. And something that we can present to the state, this is what we're doing, guys. And you could even title it, The Safer Subways Begins With You, or Safer Transit Begins With You, and point to those things that were brought up. Oh, here's someone who was arrested, felony assault on MTA. It was out on the street in 24 hours. That's legality. That's legislation. That's something they should be taking care of. They can't have it both ways.
So they do have, that legislation is debated and discussed in Albany. It was a big part of the mayoral debate last night as well.
But as transit advocates.
Yeah.
And I think we need to take that up to the state. And this isn't a rush job. This is something I think we should aim to release in January when they're going back into session, before they start the crack down on the fare evasion, make the subways, make transit safer bullshit. If you want it, here.
Yeah.
Do some legislation.
Yeah.
Make it so that when we arrest these people and show the arrest statistics, arrests are up over 100%. But we're putting them into the system and you guys are allowing it to get kicked back out because of your legislation. You want safer transit?
Yeah.
Do something about it. But give them all the facts, the figures, the ammunition. And I just think that'd be a great project to work on.
I think that's out of scope for us. I think we've got so many other things inside the system. There are a lot of people talking about bail reform more broadly in the state. I don't think we need to spend our time.
Not bail reform,
but that's what this is.
Specifically regarding transit.
But that's why these people that bail reform is the reason that people are being released without bail. We're not a lot of people involved in that.
What we're trying to do, we're trying to make, we're not telling, they can keep their bail reform. but then don't push it back on us that we're not doing our job. We're arresting the people, we're putting them in. If they want to keep bail reform, fine, but then they
We as
can
a
shut
committee are
their.
trying to improve conditions in the subway. I don't, nobody's.
Yeah, but that's.
But we want them to shut their mouths about, we're not doing our bit.
To shut their mouth. I want people to have these discussions. I'm just saying, yeah, we're figuring out our priorities and where we want to assign. staff.
I'm not saying
to be,
but that's really not outside our scope. I agree to disagree with you on that.
Sharon.
One quick thing, could we consider somehow having a standardization of the trains and the subways when they're in the station, at the ends of the station, and a way to signal that they're about to leave?
They do.
No, they do.
They have green lights that go on and then there's a bell. And then the conductor is supposed to make an announcement.
Terminals.
Huh?
That's what she said at the beginning and end.
No, it means at the platform, in the state, at the terminals or in the.
Stations.
In Flushing and Southeast, all these. You don't know. You don't know when the train's about to leave. And sometimes they say our last stop will be such and such, but I'm not aware of any other signaling of any kind. And it would be nice to have some kind of standardized system throughout the system. That's all.
What about the roads?
It's all different car equipment, but it's a thought.
All right.
I'm sorry, do you mind if I make a comment?
Sure.
What our presenters were talking about before, all the circumstances that they described, the people were out on bail. I just wanted to clarify that. Reform, I feel like it's a separate conversation, and I know it's definitely been controversial in the past few years, but it doesn't touch the cases that presenters talked about because that's what on.
Yeah, so because it does have anything.
Lenient judges was part of it too.
Right.
Yeah.
So are we saying the bail was too low? Like, what are we advocating? Advocating for no bails?
No, I'm sorry. I think that it makes sense to highlight some of the issues that the MTA system is going through and the impact of the bill, right? And what those changes have now created, where now you're having more people back on the streets, creating more issues within the train system. So I think finding a way how to create that report, whether it's an update, I think we did a safety report.
Well, I like
just updating that,
I like the recidivism. The number of people who continually do that, highlight that point.
Karen, so I know that there was a lot of talk from the federal government a couple of months ago, especially with congestion pricing, about putting pressure on the MTA to improve subway safety. And they have publicly said that the MTA released or sent a 20-page response to the federal government detailing everything that the MTA is doing to reduce crime and then the partnerships with the other agencies. And so maybe we could encourage them to also send a similar thing to the legislature about what they're doing, just to make sure that they're getting ahead of the budget conversations. That way we don't have to wade into some politically difficult territory, but we can also, of course, talk when.
Again, not advocating, we're telling them to change the laws. If that's what they're comfortable with, if that's what they want, but make the point that this is why we're having a lot of the problems, we're having the crime in the transit system that we're having, is because of the recidivism. If you guys are comfortable, you want to keep the bail laws the way they are, fine, but this is the result of that. And we just want you guys to know, so when you're breaking our cookies about why we have the crime statistics that we do, why we have fare evasion that we do, your call. That's all, that's all.
This new kind of business?
Yeah.
Because I'll be quick.
We'll frame it. We'll frame something over the next few weeks and think about it and
priorities for next.
Yeah.
Right now, they're gonna go on vacation, they're all gonna go home in a month and they're gonna forget about everything until they get reelected and so.
Two things, guys, there's stuff on the table here, please take some. There's the Neverlands and the combo. It does relate to the railroads as well. Second question, Jerry, this is for you as well. There is other ways, because I've been advocating with elected officials as well. And I show them pictures. When I did pictures, I show them what things we have to continue advocating. If we're going to show them, and there are times, not just the elected officials we have to bug them, but sometimes you have to remind the staff that it's not just one type of safety on the trains and buses, but it's also railroads, customers like Kalia, Trudy, me, or anyone here, all types of disabilities and any seniors or veterans. We pay the fares. All we're asking is look at it. Go ahead, Andrew, what you were gonna say? I know you're gonna say.
No, I wasn't.
Oh, okay, because I was gonna say, thanks for backing. The bottom line is, it's like I've mentioned to these officials, you want safety in the transit system, you want this fare invasion to stop. We have cops on the train stations. Here's the problem.
Okay,
Cameras is another thing we need to work on too.
all right.
Thank you, Randy.
All
If
right.
if we could have cameras for the conductors so they don't have to stick their heads out, they could see from in their cabin what's happening up and down the platform, I think.
That's why I was waiting for you to say that.
Makes sense.
That's why I was waiting.
And how is it okay to release somebody who just bashed a conductor's head in, almost split their skull open? How is that okay?
I mean, it goes back, when I was a conductor 50-something years ago, my biggest fear was being spit at.
Yeah.
So you can see how things have changed. Okay.
That's the worst feeling you could ever feel.
But, why are you calling on everybody but me? I mean,
You've had more than ample opportunity.
I did not have ample
I'm not gonna argue about it. We're running out of time. The one thing I don't want is to keep you past your time. I appreciate the time that you're giving here. What else?
Jason has his
Yeah,
hand.
Jay, last one, real quick.
Jason calls on me.
Jason, real quick.
He's trying to unmute.
I want to thank everybody for doing this meeting. Jerry, I totally agree with you 100%. But at the same time, if we see something unusual, we should report it. Because
Yes.
every time that I don't see a police officer not at the station, or if I see something unusual,
He just froze. Say something.
Thank you, Jay.
All right, so there's nothing else. What is the last thing you want to say?
It's freezing, so you can't hear.
clocking out of work within the next couple of hours. You
Okay,
guys
thank you.
know
Okay.
how many people survey on the S40?
We need to move on to the,
St.
thank
George,
you.
approximately 15 people on a typical work day. So guys, have a wonderful weekend. I'll see you guys in the board meeting.
Very, very quickly, because I've spoken to Andrew about this at length, including this morning, and then it happened again. I have to change from the number 6 to the 4 or 5 at Grand Central in order to get here, because the 6 only stops at Brooklyn Bridge.
Yes.
It happened again this morning, which is why I was late, because as people are getting off the number 6, there is a 4 or a 5 in at the stop. And it literally, as people, the door is opening on the number 6, and a conductor can see it of it, or whoever does this.
They close it on there.
Just close the express. I have to schedule lost 11. No, they have to, they don't stay on.
They only have to make connections during rush hour. That's what we're taught when we go to. So you know.
What time is up?
I moved the meeting be adjourned.
Sorry, second.
Motion to adjourn.
Second.
She made I'll second it.
Thank you for all taking time out of your very busy things for being here. I always say that at the end of my meetings. I appreciate it.
Thank you, everyone, for the balance.